You know, for law enforcement here in the DFW Metroplex, this is something that they prepare for but hope doesn't happen. The mood here earlier, of course, was somber. People hugging and talking to each other. Like you mentioned, multiple law enforcement agencies were out here to show support. We still do not know the name of the officer that was shot and killed today. Chief David Gill saying that he was a father, a husband, and a 21-year veteran of the Mesquite Police Department. Now let's tell you how we got here. Just before 2 o'clock this afternoon, according to law enforcement, they say that the officer was responding to a disturbance call outside of Albertson's grocery store in Mesquite. Chief Gill says the suspect pulled out a gun and the officer was shot twice. The gunman was shot once. At last check, the gunman is still alive and in the hospital behind us. We still don't know the nature of the call, nor do we have the identity of the gunman, and we don't know how many people were involved in that 911 call. Now, for hours, law enforcement officials waited outside of Baylor University Medical Center in downtown Dallas. Dallas Police Chief Eddie Garcia and officers from nearby agencies were also here to show support. Surrounded by officers, Chief Gill delivered the news this evening that his officer died.
This was a senseless act of violence that ripped a loving father and husband from his family. He was a 21-year veteran of the Mesquite Police Department. He was a good man, a good friend, a good officer. Please keep his family and our family in your prayers.
Chief Gill did not take any questions afterward. After talking to the media, all of the officers huddled together across the street in prayer. Shortly after the prayer, they lined up outside of the emergency room doors as the fallen officer's body was loaded into the van. Now, a procession of more than 24 law enforcement officials and vehicles, along with the motorcycle officers, left the hospital. Sky 4 captured the procession as it made its way from Baylor through downtown Dallas and eventually to the medical examiner's office. After his body was brought inside the building, the officers who joined the procession got out of their vehicles, walked to the loading dock area, and gave one final salute. Again, like we mentioned, I mean, we just had an officer, he was off duty, but an officer died last week in our metro area, and this is something that has happened, and officers from other law enforcement agencies, of course, when something tragic like this happens, come and show support. Dallas police were working traffic, and again, it was just a somber mood here tonight. Governor Greg Abbott just released a statement saying he and his wife and his family are praying for the officer's family, and the governor said that this is just an example of how the men and women who serve our city, our country in law enforcement put their lives on the line every day. Still a lot of unanswered questions with the investigation.
All right, Stephen, thank you.